And it was literally the names of the...
Okay, let's continue on looking at, we actually looked at this slide last week, but I want to go back and just kind of review it because we rushed through it there near the end of the class, right? This is the slide we were on. So remember that the word Brahman is not to be confused with Brahma. Brahma is one of the three main deities recognized in Hinduism today, but Brahman is a different idea. He's portrayed in both non-theistic, in other words, having no attributes, being impersonal, and theistic with attributes in personal terms. Now, how can you view him as being with or without? Well, you don't view him as being both. Some Hindus believe he's impersonal, some believe he's personal. And again, you have to expect just about anything in Hinduism. If you have 330 million gods recognized, then concepts about ultimate reality are going to vary widely within Hinduism. So even today, when Hinduism is acknowledged as a major religion, there is still so much diversity that sometimes it's difficult to recognize it as a religion, singular. Okay, but that's just the way it is. All right, let's get, what's going on here? Okay, he's considered to be unknowable. I think we talked about that as well. And again, we would acknowledge that the God we worship possesses characteristics that are unfathomable. We understand, for instance, that he is powerful, but it's hard for us to fathom the idea of infinite power or infinite presence, that sort of thing. A question of degree. He's variously described, yet inexpressible. And again, we would also make that statement regarding the God we serve. He goes by various titles, names. The sacred, in Hinduism, Brahman is the sacred operative power in sacrifice. So when sacrifices are being offered, there's some sort of spiritual activity going on that they themselves would have a difficult time describing, defining, okay? And they would say that he's the underlying power of the universe as well. So in the sacrificial rituals, he's present and operative in some way. In the universe itself, and what exactly is the universe in Hinduism? Well, hang on, I'm going to come back and talk about that because not everybody agrees. He's like salt in water or clay in statues. Salt, you can't tell that salt water is salt water until you taste it. You know, it's there, but it's invisible, it's imperceptible, that idea. He's the thread of the thread. Well, what do you mean by the thread of the thread? Well, ask a Hindu and you'll probably get a very nebulous sort of an answer. Is there a thread inside of a thread? Well, it's kind of that invisible something or other that makes the thread what it is. It's very nebulous. He's omnipotent and omnipresent, of course, two attributes that we attribute to our God. I shouldn't say we attribute them. He attributes them to himself. We recognize them. He's the source of all manifestations, okay? And from this Brahman deistic principle, whether personal or impersonal, spring many forms, including human beings. Now, we're going to pause here. Where did human beings come from? The scriptures that we acknowledge make it very clear how God created the world and created human beings, right? But in Hinduism, there's a lot of confusion. You don't have this in your notes. I found this. Whoops. Okay, I don't know why that happened. Let me... just one second, let me fix that. On my computer, it was working fine. Let me see if I can. Boy, that's weird. Not sure what happened here. Just a second. All right, hang on a second. I apologize. I added this morning. It worked. It looked fine. I'm just going to smallenize this a little bit, make it easier for you to read. Okay, let's try that. There we go. Okay, so this comes from the BBC, okay, in Britain, an analysis of how the origins of the universe are explained in Hinduism. And these are some explanations that are given. These aren't not all Hindus believe all of this. Within Hinduism, you'll find these and probably many others. A lotus flower grew from Lord Vishnu's navel with Brahma sitting on it. Brahma separated the flower into three parts: the heavens, the earth, and the sky. Okay. Another view, out of loneliness, Brahma, who of course is the third of those three, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, Brahma split himself into two to create a male and female. From this male and female, all beings were created. Another idea makes reference to life coming from the cracking of an enormous egg, which is the life from which the universe is born. Another idea, the hymn of creation from the Rig Veda, concludes that nobody knows how the universe came into being, and even questions whether Brahman knows. All right? Some Hindu texts offer a more scientific explanation based on the evolution of primary elements from a single course. And you could probably go on and on and on with other views. I don't know about you, but I look at this and you just have to feel sorry for people that have nothing more than this to go on. Maybe this, maybe that, maybe something else, we're not totally sure. But remember that in Eastern religions especially, history and historical accuracy is not a big deal. It's what is taught, whether that teaching comes from something historically, demonstrable or not. So that's important to keep in mind. These accounts and others were written many centuries ago in and around what we now know as India. They were not necessarily intended to be taken as literal scientific truth, but are indicators of the complexity and infinite nature of the universe. And again, because the universe is infinite in a Hindu mindset, we don't have to understand or explain these things. It's not necessary. In fact, the deeper they are, the more complex and rich our religion becomes. So, again, as I said Thursday, if you feel kind of mixed up, you're in good company, because Hindus themselves are all over the map on where things originated. Okay, it's very sad, but that's the way it is. So, many forms, including human beings, come from who knows where. Number 5, Om, or Aum, is chanted by Brahmin priests as the sound of Brahman. Now, if Brahman penetrates everything, okay, he's in and whether he's personal or impersonal, he's involved underlying everything, the sacrifices, the universe, humans, then there's this idea that there is some sort of a reverberation that can take place that harmonizes us with this Brahman concept that's all over. And so the chanting is an attempt by Brahmin priests, and maybe others as well, to enter into harmony with the rest of the universe. So the Om, or Om, is, and you guys probably have studied, the fact that even in the created universe, as we understand it, there are sounds, right? I mean, some say that when Psalm 19 says there is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard, that voice being heard may even reflect the idea of vibrations, of sounds, pitches that are existent in the universe. Whether that's what the psalmist had in mind or not, I don't know. Okay, it's just an idea. But that's the idea. So Brahmin priests try to enter into harmony with the rest of creation in order to connect with that deist idea, that God idea that is everywhere. Okay? So you can see the difference between that and what the scriptures teach about how we enter into communion, into harmony, into fellowship with the Creator. How do we do it? Do we do it by chanting sounds that resonate? So how do we do it? Well, God initiated a form of communication with us, right? It's the scriptures. So he created us with the ability to respond in like manner to him. So the communication that God revealed to us and built into us as people made in his image is what gives us the ability to enter into harmony with him. Okay? So very different from an Indian idea. All right? Let's move on to this one, samsara. This is a word you do need to know, okay? Very important. And if you go online, you can find all kinds of images like this that kind of describe what samsara is. Anybody familiar with that word? Heard of it? An idea what it is? Before we get into the notes, I don't know if you've had anybody in contact with. All right. Well, samsara is a word from Sanskrit that means a wandering. It refers to a wandering. Okay. What does wandering have to do with Hindu religion? Why wandering? In what sense does a Hindu view himself or herself as wandering? Well, the wandering here has nothing to do with this particular life that you're living right now. It has to do with the sequence of lives, right? You live and die, and then what happens? If you're Hindu, you're reincarnated, okay? You live another life. You die, you're reincarnated. The wandering refers to wandering from life to life to life to life. And what is the goal? Yeah, go ahead. Well, I cannot begin to describe everything that's in here, but it depicts the passage from life to life. It's a wheel. And so the idea of wandering is the idea of cycling from one life to another through incarnation. And not all of these images look the same. You'll find a huge variety of these online. So the main idea that we need to understand here is that of a wheel that depicts the idea of wandering from one life to another. And Hindus do not view that as something that they want to continue doing forever. What do they eventually want to do as it relates to this cycle? Yeah, they want to get out of this. The idea is eventually be liberated from, remember we said way back at the beginning of the semester, every one of these religions has some concept of salvation or liberation, right? Redemption. So for the Hindu, the ultimate goal for existence is to get out of this cycle. And not all Hindus have the same idea as to how you get out of it. Does anybody happen to remember the word that we looked at that refers to liberation? Yeah. Moksha, exactly. Yep. And I'll put that up here again. Moksha is that word. So if you ask a Hindu, how many lives do you believe you have lived up till now? You know, he or she will have no idea. There's no way for a Hindu to say, well, I've lived, 75 or, 1 million lives. There's just no way to know. So, I hope that when you see this, you just see something of the hopelessness that is bound up in this religion. Yeah, liberation from samsara is called moksha. We saw that the other day, and you do need to, those are really important words for you to remember, moksha. And so the big question that we have to ask is, how is it that you escape from this ongoing cycle? Samsara, interestingly, is not a Vedic idea. That is fascinating. Just a second. It did not come from the idea of the Vedas. So where did it come from? And here, again, I want to show you something that sorry, I have a little trouble here. Okay, it didn't come. It appears in the Upanishads. Now remember that the Upanishads were written a lot later. And so that's where the whole idea of samsara, this cycle, was developed. So what did Hindus believe before the Upanishads were written? Okay, remember that the Upanishads are considered like appendices, additions to the Vedas. Well, I found this online from a different website. Historically, in the Vedas, we do not find a clear reference to rebirth. There is reference to how our body, after it dies, returns to nature, just like the primordial Purusha. Remember Purusha, that guy that's kind of superimposed on the triangle of the castes? So his eye becomes the sun, his breath becomes the wind. There is reference to something that outlives death, Atman, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Jiva, manas, prana. There is reference to a happy land of ancestors and gods, Swarga, and to the painful land below the three heavens, Naraka. There is reference to feeding the ancestors, but the idea of rebirth as we know it today is not yet formed until the Upanishads. So there is just a lot of vagueness before that as to what happens to a person, okay? There is still vagueness today, but the Upanishads, at least in part, took a step in the direction of trying to clarify a little bit about what happens when a person dies. You see, it's all over the place. It's really, really difficult. Now, one thing you have to make sure you understand is the difference between what they mean by rebirth and what you mean by rebirth. So tell me, what's the difference? Because both use the term rebirth, Christianity and Hinduism.
What's literal, what's more spiritual?
Literal how?
Well, they're literally being, born again. Wait, are you talking here or
Yeah, either one.
the reincarnation aspect?
Okay, yeah. So rebirth in Hinduism is kind of synonymous with?
Reincarnation.
Yeah, right. Okay. It's a new life, and we'll talk, when we talk about the Atman in just a moment, we'll talk about this a little bit more. But it is not, you're right, it is physical. It involves the physical person in whatever form you assume in your next life, right? And so we use the word regeneration, which means rebirth, and they would use the word rebirth in the sense of reincarnation. Okay, does the Bible teach that you will have a different body someday? Now be careful with that question. You believe you'll have a different body someday? What does the Bible teach about your body? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I prefer not to say a new body because that actually reflects the idea of something different from what you had before. It'll be different in what sense? Right, it'll be free from the consequences of sin, the effects of sin. But the Bible teaches the resurrection of the body, okay? Whereas reincarnation actually believes that you can come back. You still have an immaterial part of you, what we would call the soul, but they have a little different idea of it, that comes back in, whatever form, depending on how you did in the previous life. Yeah, so this is, and Cody, as you mentioned, we believe that the rebirth is a spiritual, okay? We call it rebirth because you were born once physically, and then you were born a second time spiritually. John 3 and other passages. Okay, so again, just look at the vagueness, the uncertainty that exists in understanding ultimate reality. And then samsara, this wandering, this cycle of reincarnation is portrayed as scary and illusory. And obviously, all you got to do is look at the uncertainty, the vagueness of it, and you can see why people would be really scared to what is actually going to happen to me when I die? What is going on? And the answers are not conclusive. Okay? You don't have to know that word Maya. The word samsara and the word moksha there are really important. Of course, Veda and Upanishad, you already know that. All right. Questions about that? Yeah. Lots of them, right? Questions that we can legitimately answer? All right, let's go to the third term, which is the term Atman, okay? Atman is the closest that they get to the concept of the soul. It's the real self. It's the real self. And again, there's variation about what they mean by that. So do Hindus believe that man has an immaterial part to himself? Yes. There is some sort of immaterial idea within man. It's not a materialistic religion. It is free, this Atman, of evil, old age, death, grief, hunger, and thirst. Now that's, in other words, there's something within you that is perfect that you haven't been able to secure yet. It's really odd to think about. You're struggling in this life, but there's a principle within all of us that is free of all this. It's perfect. And you'll only really become this when you get out of that cycle. As long as you're in the reincarnation cycle, you're going to struggle with evil, old age, death, grief, hunger, thirst, and other things like that. And so the principle is there. The potential for being rid of all that is there, but you're still attached to it until you experience moksha, liberation. Okay? Through meditation, one enters a state of consciousness that catches a glimpse of the Atman. Now, do you remember what one of the distinguishing differences was between the Vedas and the Upanishads as it relates to this statement? What did they emphasize?
More mental, thoughtful, as opposed to action.
Right. The Vedas were really connected to the rituals, how we do rituals right and all that. And the Upanishads, they didn't trash the rituals, but they placed more emphasis on the interpersonal, the Atman, and through meditation. Now, meditation on what? The Upanishads? No. The Vedas? No. What was this meditation on? If the Upanishads are going to emphasize meditation, what are you thinking about? Good question. All right, here's where a concept comes in that is really, really different. Okay? And I don't know that all Hindus would embrace this idea, but many Hindus believe that this life is an illusion. Just think about that for a minute. If they follow their logic, they would say that we are not actually meeting in this classroom. I'm not actually standing up here talking to you. You're not sitting there drinking tea. You guys aren't all wearing, faith shirts, faith gear. Well, you're not, but and I'm not trying to pick on you. They would say that this is all an illusion. And as long as we are attached to this illusion idea, we will remain entrapped in the samsara. And so the only way that you can be released, moksha, from the samsara is by, through meditation, coming to completely detach yourself from this illusory idea of existence. So everything that's about your five senses, smell, taste, all the five senses, is all an illusion. And when you come to a place where you can detach yourself from that, then you have liberated yourself from the samsara. Just think about that. Life becomes an illusion. Now, think about the difference between that and what we believe as revealed in God's Word. God's Word was revealed in time and space using human languages and talking about truth in human terms that relate to our existence, right? God came to us in the context in which we live. I mean, that's the whole idea. The ultimate presence of God is the incarnation of Jesus Christ, coming to be a man like we are, living in time and space like we are. So we would say that our revelation is a revelation that corresponds with the way God created things. But Hinduism, no. Ultimate reality, the ultimate destination is completely separated from what we perceive to exist today. It's all an illusion. And by the way, Buddhism carries that forward, because Buddhism comes out of Hinduism, and it actually, as we'll see, it actually continues that idea. Can you even imagine living with that idea in your mind, that this is all an illusion? How can you possibly exist with that feeling, with that idea? I don't think it's possible. And in real life, a Hindu person doesn't actually live that way. You can't. That's the way God created us. There's no way that you can live this life actually living and believing that this doesn't exist. It's totally contrary to the way that God designed things. That's the idea. Okay? Very different. So the Atman is that part of you, once you detach yourself from this samsara cycle, the Atman is the part then that enters into whatever. So what is that ultimate reality? In other words, when you get out of that cycle, what do you become, or where are you?
Previously, I talked about 3 levels of heaven or something like that.
Yeah, but I think that's still within the idea of the reincarnation. You know, you die, you go back into nature, you become, but then you're reincarnated and you become something else. So you're still attached, even at that time. I mean, this is really different. Okay, it just is. It's awkward for us. It's awkward for anybody. So it's somehow you become enlightened. In fact, Buddhism is going to popularize the word enlightenment as it relates to this. In other words, so they're not afraid to say, we don't understand what that's going to be. There's no way to know what it's going to be. You only know it when you get there. That's a common understanding among Hindus. You will only understand this when it happens. See, so when we talk about ultimate reality, what do we talk about? What's the destination of the believer in Jesus Christ? Be careful with your answer. What's your ultimate destination? Yeah. We talk about spending eternity in heaven. You're going to spend eternity in heaven or hell. Well, that's not really accurate. The Bible teaches that we're going to come back and we're going to live on the new earth, and God is going to come and make his dwelling among us on the new earth. Okay? So, and we understand the new heaven and the new earth as a restoration of the old creation that was corrupted by sin. It groans, Paul says in Romans, and someday it's going to be liberated. Okay? So that's the Christian concept of ultimate reality. We are going to exist in resurrected bodies. But Hindus don't attempt to try to describe what that ultimate state is. They say it's impossible to know. You'll just know when you're there. Okay? Very different. Very different. Thus, number 4, moksha comes through the realization of the Brahman within. So some would actually say that the Atman is actually the God concept within you. Whatever that God, impersonal or personal, is, there's a God concept within you that permeates your being. And when you get out of that samsara cycle, that's all that'll be left, just the God part. And it'll do whatever it does. Be absorbed into the great Brahman, I don't know. One of the things I think that we get from this, Satan really likes to keep people in the dark. And he convinces them that this vagueness that we keep talking about is okay, and it's a good thing because it signifies something profound. But that's not the way God revealed himself to us in the scriptures. Even though there are things we don't understand, God gave us a revelation that by and large you can read and understand. It involves stories and concepts and teaching that we can embrace. Okay? But Satan loves to take people into a very blurry concept of things and say it's okay. You don't have to understand it because it's deep and it's rich, but it's all a lie. All right. Okay, last one, karma. Now you all know what that is, right? I just looked at my credit karma the other day. See how I'm doing. You guys use the credit karma to see what your credit score is. So what's karma? You know what it is. What is it? Oh, come on, you know what karma is. The popular rendering of karma is actually what Hinduism believes about karma, which is what?
Kind of like balance, what you do is going to come back to you.
Yeah, exactly. Is that a biblical concept? Don't be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that he reaps. Exactly. And so here's a biblical concept that is being used, by another religion, by the god behind this religion, Satan, for other purposes. So karma refers to actions. Now, does it refer to thoughts as well? I don't think so in Hinduism. I don't think they would, I don't know. Again, you could probably find somebody that does. Now, there is another word. I don't know that I have it in the notes. I'm going to put it up here for you. It rhymes with karma, and it makes it easy to remember. That's the word dharma, D-H-A-R-M-A. Dharma refers to duty, what we should do. Just like the ritual idea in the Vedas, the rituals, doing them correctly, that's dharma. And good dharma leads to good karma. You do duty, it's like you should, then you're producing good karma that will help you in the next life, give you a better next life. Okay? Now, here's the thing. If you want to be enlightened, what do you have to do? If you want to get out of this samsara cycle, what do you have to do to make that happen? You have, meditate with the intention of detaching yourself from this illusory existence. How do you do that while you're trying to produce dharma that produces good karma, that gives you a better next cycle of life? It's a mess, you see. It can't be done. It can't be done. In fact, in Buddhism, we'll see, just projecting ahead, that in Buddhism, you even have to detach yourself from desire. Buddhism will say that the reason we're still trapped in this cycle of reincarnation is because we still possess desire. And until you completely detach yourself from all desire, you can't. Well, do you desire to be detached from all desire? That's a desire. I'm just saying. And again, I'm jumping to Buddhism here, but Buddhism springs out of Hinduism, so there are commonalities here. It determines one's current and future lives. 3, all present life is the fruit of one's former life. So if you're a Dalit, an outcast, you're there because you deserved it. Imagine trying to make that one happen in the United States right now. Man, whose fault is it in the United States that people are poor and needy? It's white males, basically, right? White privilege is the problem in our country right now. Yeah. Both physical and mental actions are karmic. Now, okay, I said before, I thought it was just referring to actions, but okay, at least some, we'll say it that way, just be careful. At least some believe that mental actions are also karmic and can produce a better life. The Upanishads, the later additions to the Vedas, teach 3 types of karma: good, bad, and neutral. Now, does the Bible teach that? Are there neutral actions and words in God's order of things? No. It's either good or evil. There's no neutral. Now, you could say certain things are amoral, but to say that certain attitudes are neutral, that's and I don't know how they would define that. Karma cannot bring moksha. Why can't it bring moksha? Because karma is still something that results from what you do. And remember, true moksha has to be a detachment from all of that. But it can bring you a better life next time. All right? Okay, let's just jump into this a little bit. Okay, questions or comments about these 4? Brahman, samsara, Atman, and karma. Are you totally confused by this? Yeah, Isaac?
The samsara, they believe that we've had previous lives, essentially. I guess it's not logical, but where would population increase come from?
Okay.
There are more people in the world now than there were a couple hundred years ago, even. So, where are the new people coming from?
Or are there not? Or is there some sort of a fixed? See, this is taking you back to that question of origins that we talked about earlier. Was there a fixed number of Atmans somewhere at the very beginning? Or, did somehow when Purusha, was killed, sacrificed, or on that lotus flower, did somehow a certain number of Atmans, spring out of that, and now they're just all involved in this cycle? I don't think anybody can give you an answer to that question. We've already seen evidence that there really is a lot of vagueness about that. It's a good question. It's a legitimate question. The Bible explains to our satisfaction how God did it through one man and one woman at the beginning. Yeah, it's a good question. But again, you're asking a question that, to satisfy the logic of the Western world, they would say, we don't worry about that. See, so, and that's what's really frustrating. I think we mentioned this also at the beginning of the semester. One of the things that we're taught in apologetics, and I'm not against apologetics, okay, I'm all in favor, but a lot of our apologetics here in the West are geared toward responding to people in the West. A lot of our apologetics will never work in the Eastern world because logic is not a big deal. And you can win a logical argument, but you haven't won them because they would say you're trapped in the tyranny of logic. You're very shallow. Our system goes much deeper. It's much richer than that. So again, I'm not against apologetics, but just understand that apologetics that works in the West may not work in the East. Yeah. Okay. You know something? I think this next part does change gears a little bit, so I think we'll stop here. Just a couple minutes. You got to go anyway, don't you? Well, why don't you all go? All right. We'll give you 2.5 extra minutes here. Grab a coffee or something, and we'll pick it up here on Thursday. All right? Thank you very much.